In this video, I'm gonna show you how I captured this photo, from conceptualizing the idea, to getting the gear together, to going to the location, the process of actually shooting it, and then I'm even gonna show you the editing process here later on. So if that sounds interesting to you, then stick around. My original plan was just to vlog and document the process of me getting my stuff together, being on set, and I did that kind of, but it turns out vlogging is actually a little harder than I thought when I've never actually tried it before. So there will be some footage to cut in, but it just wasn't good enough to actually make up the majority of the video. So my idea for this photo initially was to have like a Pennsylvania woodsman or like a mountain man or something sitting at a campfire, and then you could tell the story about like he's like cooking some food or something. It's insinuated that he maybe killed an animal and he's cooking it up and eating it. That's kind of the story I was going for. So I reached out to my friend Eli, who I thought would be a great model for this. And by the way, my friend Eli is not like, has never modeled before. I just reached out to him because I thought this project would interest him, and it did, and he got a cool photo out of it, and I got a model that fit the description of the photo I was trying to do. So what happened was, whenever we were actually going through the set of props that we had to create the photo, we realized that we didn't have like a Pennsylvania mountain man look as much as like a cowboy look, which was fine. So we modified the story to it being a cowboy sitting at a campfire. He's gonna have a hatchet stuck in the log next to him. He's gonna be holding a gun maybe, or having a gun leaning up against the log near him. And he was gonna be like doing something at the fire. That was the entire idea going into this photo shoot. I got in my car, I actually got together with my friends, and right before we did this photo shoot, we decided to do some deadlifts. So we were messing around doing that. That was fun. So we got a good workout in, and then we were waiting for dark to come so we could actually get the photo. We couldn't have any natural light because obviously it was supposed to be dark and dramatic. So once we finished our deadlifts and night came, we traveled up in the woods. I hauled all my gear up there. And there was a fire pit that my friend had. It'd be more realistic or whatever for the cowboy to just clear out an area in the woods to build the fire, but we were worried more about safety in the photo in that aspect, because we didn't want to burn the woods down. So whenever I was setting up to like get my gear ready for this photo shoot, I was trying to figure out which lens I wanted to capture this photo with, and I wanted to use a fast prime. I recently got the Fujifilm 50-140, which I'm using to film this right now. I wanted to see how it would perform, but I realized that the 2.8 aperture of the 50-140, it was a really dark environment. It wasn't gonna work out. So I brought some fast primes. I brought the 33mm 1.4, the 50mm f2, I believe, and then the 85mm 1.8 Viltrox lens that I have. 3 great fast prime lenses, and I was figuring I was going to shoot them wide open because, again, we're in a dark environment. Initially, I wanted to use one of those longer focal lengths, either the 50 or the 85, but just where we were shooting was on a really steep hill. So in order to use a longer focal length, I'd have to be farther down the hill with the tripod really far up. So the only lens that was really going to work in this situation, just because of that fact, was the 33mm 1.4, just because physically the distance I could get from the subject with the lens to capture it, that was the only lens that worked. So once we got there, it was dark out. We were working with flashlights. I wish I would have got a video of this. I kind of did, some behind the scenes stuff. And it was just funny. There was this moment where my friend Eli, who was supposed to be the model, was making the fire. I was just filming him make the fire on my phone. And then my friend Mason, he was just standing there like eating a protein bar. And we were just like watching Eli do all the work. I just thought that was a funny little clip. But when we got there, I was figuring that to make this scene work, the idea of a cowboy sitting at a campfire, we have to think about lighting. Photography is all about lighting. It's obviously going to be a really dark environment. We'd need to figure out our lighting and our camera settings. So what is the scene creatively that I'm trying to create? I want the fire to be the main light, the thing that's kind of illuminating the darkness. I want it to be like all darkness kind of surrounded and just the firelight on the cowboy. So what I did is I took these 2 LED panel lights and I put them down near the fire, not so close that they would get burnt or broken or something, but I put them down on the ground, and I set them to orange. They were colored. You could do any color on the lights. So I set them to orange, and I turned them up a certain, I don't know, like 40% or whatever, and they were like throwing light up at the cowboy. It was important, up at my friend who was playing the cowboy. It's important that they were down on the ground to be coming from the same direction of the fire, because if I, for whatever reason, had the campfire light coming up from above, the shadows it would create wouldn't make sense with the supposed light source that is creating that. I could have just used the fire for light, but it would have been really dark and I'd have to be cranking up my ISO and down my shutter speed and all this stuff. So in order to create a nice sharp image, I thought it'd be best to supplement the firelight with these LEDs. And then I wanted to add the look of like moonlight in the background. So I brought a flash out with me. Those LED panels that were emulating fire were constant light. And then I had a little flash it was in a Bowens mount thing. So I had an Aputure lantern softbox, which is just like a big circle that throws light everywhere. And I put a blue gel in the flash so it could be nice, cool moonlight. So then we had the color contrast of the orange fire and then the blue moonlight. And I was very careful to make sure the moonlight was very subtle. I didn't want it to be nearly as bright as the fire. I wanted it to be barely noticeable, but I wanted you to be able to see the environment that the cowboy's in. You wanted to be able to see he's in the woods, because after all, it is the idea of the photos to be an environmental portrait. We took our props. We had a hatchet that Eli had. We stuck it into a log near him. He had this old like gun from the 1800s or something. He sat it across his lap. Initially, we were gonna have it like sitting up near him, but then as we were actually taking the photos, I realized it was more interesting to have him like holding the gun, and then instead of looking into the fire, which is the initial idea, I had him looking out into the darkness, like he was almost ready for something to happen, because I thought that was a more compelling story. And this is the photo that we ended up with. My camera settings, I can still remember exactly. I shot it wide open at 1.4. It focused perfectly. I was also at 1/25th of a second with the camera on a tripod. The reason for this is I wanted to get some motion blur in the fire. I wanted it to look like it was moving instead of being just frozen in time. And then of course I just had to have Eli hold really still in order to get that photo. With those settings, letting in a lot of light with the slow shutter speed and the fast aperture, I was actually able to use the base ISO of 160 on my X-T3. So the cleanest possible file, so I could push the shadows and stuff and make the moonlight brighter if I wanted in post or whatever. Instead of if I was shooting at ISO 1600 or whatever that I would actually have to use in that situation if I wasn't supplementing the lighting, then I wouldn't have nearly as much pushability. The file would be a lot more noisy looking. So I got a nice clean file with these settings. So now I'm going to go to a segment where I show you me editing this photo. I've already edited the photo once. I just kept the raw file so I could edit again for the purpose of this video. So you could just see kind of the process of like what actually comes out of the camera with this lighting and preparation and what you can do with it. I didn't edit it too much, but I just wanted to show you what I did because it's kind of the premise of this video. All right, so now we're on to the editing portion of this video. I have the file pulled up in Lightroom Classic here. This is the raw file unedited. I already have edited this photo, but I'm going to show you kind of what I did. This is coming right out of the camera. You can see, at least for me, with all these studio lights in here in the darkness, like this is supposed to be the moonlight, it's way more subtle on this file than it looked like at night. Like the light seemed a lot brighter. So the first thing I actually did, which is nice because I'm shooting at base ISO of 160 because I decided to shoot at 1.4, 1/25th of a second, so I was able to get the cleanest file out of this possible because I'm just going to take the shadows and just turn them up all the way. Like, I just want to be able to see the environment that he's in. I'm not just gonna leave it just like that, but you can see that you get a lot more of a context here. There's also this light pole here that was originally where the flash is. That's putting all this moonlight around him. That ends up in the shot, and then if you look down here, these end up getting in the shot. These are. Can you see the corner? Yeah, this one right here. This is the corner of the light panel. These are shining the light up at him for the campfire. All I did was do the spot healing brush. Just for the sake of this video, I'll show you how I'll get rid of one of them here. So all I'm doing is just using the spot healing brush or whatever in Lightroom Classic. You can do this much more intricately in Photoshop, but even just like that is good enough. Like, that looks fine to me, especially zoomed out, you're not even going to notice. So like that's basically what I did to just cover up, I did it in smaller sections, but this light pole, I just kind of spot healing brush, go down like this. Like that looks fine. You can't even tell from a distance. And then obviously I would take care of the feet of this stand here after, but like that's all I did for the spot healing brush. Rinse and repeat. That's what I did. But for the most part, you wouldn't want to just like end up having that in the final photo anyway, but I missed those aspects, so that's what I did. I left it in Provia. Fujifilm obviously has these different simulations, and I looked through them all whenever I originally edited, and I like the amount of contrast that Provia has. So I'm also just going to bring up the brightness of the image overall. You can see that's going to have a little bit of slight clipping. If you look at the histogram here, that's in this fire here, if I show. So right there, that's what's actually clipping in the image. And if you look, nothing else is clipping. It's just that fire there. That's okay. That's supposed to be the brightest part of the image. We can bring down those highlights a little bit, like maybe minus like 10. And then we'll bring that maybe just a smidge less bright. So like that, we brought it up 65, which originally it looked bright enough to me, but now you're actually seeing a lot of this moonlight is becoming a lot more obvious, maybe even a little fake. So then I'm gonna add a little bit of a tone curve here, just bring down, add a little bit of natural contrast, because Provia doesn't have a lot of natural contrast. So bring that up, bring that down. So that's getting, basically this image is looking done to me. I think I added very slight amount of saturation and then maybe a little bit of texture and clarity. Like I never add very much at all, just a very slight touch. It's a very sharp lens anyway, even at 1.4. And this image is done to me. It doesn't need a vignette. It has a natural dark border. Obviously, I would have taken care of this. I did in the actual other version, but I'm just showing you a quick example of how I edited this. So a lot of the planning for this photo made it so I didn't have to edit very much. I figured out my lighting ahead of time. I made it, figured out how I was gonna make it realistic. And it was just the planning ahead of time makes the post process a lot easier and it takes less time. So I hope you got something out of this video. I'm gonna go to the other Matt who's gonna wrap it up for you. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video. It was definitely something different. I wanted to try something new. I made it somewhat gear related in the title, but I'm trying to make an active effort to step away from just doing gear reviews because that is the overwhelming majority of where the views are coming from for this channel. All my gear reviews of Fujifilm gear and stuff, and that's great, but ultimately I don't want to be remembered as the guy who just reviewed Fujifilm gear, especially like 20 years from now. All this gear is going to be outdated and obsolete, and I'm just going to be the guy who reviewed gear in his time, in the long run, looking at things, this YouTube channel in the long run. So I want to try to create content that's actually helpful for you and any photographer, not just in the Fujifilm system, not in any specific system. I want to talk about things that are more universal, things that like how I can actually help you and hopefully future photographers watching this video create better images, how to actually plan for shoots, the creative process beyond just the gear involved. So that can be a small part of it, and I don't think it's ever going to be not a part of it at all, but I want to step away from that and create more content with more depth, if that makes sense. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this does well. Leave a like if you enjoyed, leave a comment down below, and let me know if you enjoy content like this, because, well, either way, I'm not going to be just pumping out gear reviews. One, because it's expensive. I need to buy everything I review or hope that the company sends it to me. And two, because I'm thinking about the legacy of this channel and what I want to be remembered for and the content that I created. I want it to be, more useful to people than just, this is a good lens, this is a bad lens. You know what I mean? So anyway, I'll see you in the next one, guys. Peace. I then continued to refer to Mason as my production assistant, which he did not appreciate. All right, this might be the shot. This is how it looks behind the scenes. We got the lights in front. We got that flashback there. We got my assistant holding the light.
I'm not your assistant.
Always practice campfire safety after you're done.
Never practice.
Shine the light on you, cowboy. The battery's out of the fire lights. In here. This somehow go in there. Good production assistant putting the tripod away for me here. Thank you so much. Do you agree with the statement that you are indeed a good production assistant? Our production system is leaving.